I'm Dr. Philip B. Gallagher, and I'd like to welcome you to the first in our new TEC speaker series on the power of peer review, coming to you from the Mercer University TechCom department. Let's jump right into this, shall we, and learn a little bit about how we can make peer review not only work for us in the classroom space, but work for us in a professional space as well. So, what am I going to cover today in this short little video? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what peer review is and why we do it. I'm also going to offer a discussion of how to focus as a peer reviewer, how to be supportive, and how to give good feedback. Last, I'll provide my own take on a student peer review guide. And this doesn't only work for students. It does. I use it in the classroom, but it can be a great tool for young professionals that are starting to work on integrated teams. Let's jump right into this. So, what is peer review? This is a question I often like to start off with in the classroom and say, what is it? And I get a lot of looks. Oh my goodness, it's just people marking up my paper. It's just my peers saying, oh, I did a good job. And then not really helping me make my content any better. But it's so much more than that. The problem is a lot of people aren't trained in how to do peer review work. So let's learn a little bit about it and get that training underway with what's peer review. Peer review, the concept is one of a content improvement tool. It's a tool that we can utilize in the work space, whether we're working on an assignment or whether we're working on a design project, to get a look at other people's work and to get them to look at our work and to respond to the strengths and the weaknesses and to give suggestions and ask questions. And in this way, peer review is a strong motivating force that creates focus in the peer reviewer and forces them in a way to engage critically with the content of what they're reviewing. As a tool, as a means of focus, peer review helps us address, anticipate, and incorporate the audience. That is, peer review, when done right, is done from the point of view of an audience so that we can respond to their needs, their questions, where they get lost, the challenges they have. And when we have that information as a designer, we can then anticipate what the review or what the audience is going to need, and we can incorporate their questions and concerns right into the redesign. So what peer review is very well defined by what it isn't. And unfortunately, those bad habits and kind of poor training that you may have had about peer review before creates a false sense of what it is. So let's learn about what it is from what it isn't. Peer review is not proofreading. And I always caution my students against this. If your first inclination is to just start marking things up, you misspelled a word here, or you missed a comma and things like that, you've got the wrong idea about what peer review is. It should be looking at the big picture and not the minutia and small issues, especially during the drafting phase of a project. Peer review is not evaluating either. We're not passing judgments, we're not making assessments, we're not assigning grades. We're simply looking at the deliverable and artifact as a user would, as an audience member would, and we're responding to that with our likes and dislikes, our wants, our confusions, our questions and challenges, and we're making all of those items visible to the designer. And then peer review is not being mean to others. And oh my goodness, if you've ever had the red pen shock that can come from peer review work, I feel your pain. It can be devastating. We want to make sure that we're not being condescending in peer review, that we're not just trying to point out every little thing and making an author or a designer feel like they got it all wrong. So it is not a chance to be mean to others. So we learned a little bit about what it is and why we do it, or what it isn't. Let's talk a little bit about why we do this kind of work, why peer review really matters. Why do we do peer review? Well, we do it first and foremost to help each other, to try to give each author, each designer, a sense of the problems, a sense of what they've done well and what they could work on. So first and foremost, it helps the author find mistakes. As a peer reviewer, I can go into my colleagues' documents, I can go into my students' documents, and I can look for errors in logic, I can look for incomplete ideas or missing evidence, and that helps a lot. So that brings me to number 2. We can help them see what's missing. If we've got an outline or if we've got a project deliverable requirement, we can look for items that may be there and may not be there and make sure that we let our designers and our authors know that they need to add that information in. Number 3, we can also address areas of thin detail. For example, as a reader, if we're talking about something new or something we've never heard of before, if we're looking at a document about that and we find that we just need a bit more to understand that topic, we can say, can you tell me a little bit more about X or Y? And then the author or designer can go in there and add that information in right where they need it. Number 4, we can help each other find more evidence. I know this works out a lot in the classroom and especially in professional groups, but we've got a lot of background and a lot of knowledge and experience that we can bring to the table. So we can say, hey, right here it'd be really good if you mentioned Jones's article, or it'd be really good if you brought in what the supervisor was telling us about last week, and we can make suggestions to bring more evidence into that work. Number 5, checking out organization. As we know, when it comes to designing material for users, they need to be able to get in, get what they need, and get out quickly. And we can help each other make sure that they're not missing any steps and that they're scaffolding that experience for their user throughout. And then number 6, we can help each other tailor their writing style. And again, I'm not talking about proofreading. That is not what I'm saying here. But we can help to make sure that each other, our partners, our peers, are using a good tone and professional and formal language, or colloquialisms and approachable conversational language when they need to. So we can make suggestions with regards to that as well. Overall, we do peer review to address the audience, to help the designer or author achieve what they need and meet the document's purpose and their purpose and the user audience's purpose with the materials they make. So, how do we do this? How do we focus as a peer reviewer? How do we act in support of the author? How do we give good feedback? Well, beginning with focus, we make sure first and foremost that we align ourselves with the user audience. That's what this all starts from. If we're really helping the author or designer make a document that meets the audience's needs, we have to play the role of a part of that audience. We have to understand who this deliverable was made for, what it's intended to do. We have to know those things inside and out. What are the people that are going to use this so that we can adopt that mindset? We need to also understand the assignment or understand the project. The better we understand that, the more focused we are at providing the support and feedback. We need to make sure in the classroom setting that we're reading the rubric. So often I find students need to double check that rubric to make sure that they're pointing out things that the authority, whether it's a primary audience or the professor, is looking for in their assignment. And reading the rubric, well, that's something we need to front load in the peer review activity. This could also be reading things like the RFP in a professional environment to make sure that we've got a sense of how our project's going to be evaluated too. And then last, make sure we're focusing on thinking globally, not locally. We want to look at the project, we want to look at the deliverable as a whole, and not get hung up on any small components that we may have in the past due to poor peer review training. Next, when it comes to being a supportive peer reviewer, we need to be open-minded. That is, we don't want to come in with a preconceived notion of what a document should or shouldn't contain. We need to come into that with realizing that other people are going to respond to assignments and situations in unique and different ways, and we need to be able to step outside of our comfort zone and be open-minded and open to those ways. We want to be sensitive. We want to make sure that we're not going to be condescending or negative or bring our own biases in to our commentary so that we're not saying something that's going to perhaps be damaging to our partner or our classmate or our colleague. We want to make sure that we're being constructive. We're saying, maybe you need a little bit more evidence here, and I think you could talk about X, Y, and Z here or there, or hey, you should bring in that article we read last week, or that information we were told not to forget. Whatever it might be, we can be constructive and come up with ways to integrate that information into the deliverable. And we can offer those ways to the writer. We want to make sure that we're praising strengths, on the same token as providing constructive criticism or constructive critique. We want to make sure we talk about what's good, talking about what's been done well in a design, whether it's a paper, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a website, whatever it is. We want to talk about the things that the author or designer has created that meet our expectations, so that they know going forward to utilize that knowledge and to recreate those experiences in the way that they already have. And sometimes we don't know what we've done right or wrong until the user lets us know. And from that perspective, we need to do that job. And then last, of course, we can create opportunities. We can make suggestions, we can ask questions, we can offer references and create opportunities for the creator of that document to move forward and take it to the next level with regards to meeting their audience's needs and expectations. Last, when it comes to giving our feedback, no hollow praise, people. Oh my goodness, that's the number one misstep decried in my classrooms and in my work groups. People just saying things are good when they aren't, quite frankly, or when there's a lot of room for improvement. Doesn't help us as a creator, as a designer, as an author, as a professional. We want to make sure that we're being honest. We want to make sure that we're pointing out the strengths and the weaknesses alongside each other, and that we're being transparent in our thoughts with regards to the deliverable itself. And again, keeping that focus on the item that is being discussed, the document, the deliverable, that is. We want to make sure we're asking questions, especially if we get confused or don't understand something, because that's going to let the designer, the creator of that deliverable know, oops, there's something here I need to clarify, I need to make sense of. We want to make sure we're sharing perspective, that we're talking about our point of view and other points of view we're familiar with, so that the author can work those into their design. Use facts, general suggestions, and encouragement, and overall, be kind, be nice to each other. So I'm going to close today with my student peer review guide. And I've assembled this over the years from a lot of different really movers and shakers and smart researchers in the field of peer review work and collaborative work in the classroom and in the workforce. So let's take a quick look here at my guide to help you out as you enter into situations either at work or in the classroom where you have to review other people's deliverables. So before you start, before you even offer your first word of constructive criticism, what you need to do is you need to read the whole document. Before you put your pen to it and start marking things up, before you put the first comment bubble in there, read the whole thing. Withhold your initial comments until you've digested the entire deliverable. Give yourself plenty of time, especially in the workplace. If you have a couple of weeks to do this, you want to make sure you give yourself a few days, perhaps even, to do this review work so that you can read it, digest it, sleep on it, reflect on it before you even start offering commentary. This is a little tough in the classroom where we might have 50, 75, or 120-minute classes, but give yourself as much time as possible as a reviewer. And then aim to be objective. Be guided by the situation, by the user audience, by the rubric if it's available to you, or the project requirements, and make sure that you withhold your own opinion and beliefs and potential biases so that you're being open-minded. Once you start reading and commenting, make sure you comment as a reader, as a user, as somebody that would interact with this document for its intended purpose. Do not comment as an evaluator. You are not the judge of this work in the peer review position most often. So you want to make sure that you're just providing those user insights. Identify the assignment topic, purpose, and message. If you're in the classroom, make sure that you can tell what is being covered, why it's being covered, and what it is saying. And the same is really true of a professional project as well. Also, make sure that you only address the writing, the language, the diction, the word choice, the sentence structure, punctuation, stuff like that, if it confuses you. That's the only time you really want to fall into that editing or proofreading mode. And really, you want to be asking questions there instead of marking up the text with a bunch of red pen. Also, make sure that you're pointing out any strengths and opportunities. As I mentioned, that lets the designer, the author know where they're doing things really well and they need to keep coming back to those, as well as areas where things are a little thin and they could come back and add in ideas and create new developments and opportunities. Number 5 here, identify any missing perspectives. Sometimes it's hard to see from other people's points of view as a creator, as a designer, as somebody who's putting text on the page. So bringing those into relief and making sure that the creator can see different people's opinions or beliefs or values and perspectives on a topic, especially controversial topics, is important. And then last, address any gaps or oversights in arguments. Sometimes we forget to put in necessary evidence for a claim, or we forget to incorporate a specific aspect of a project. And we need to make sure that any of those issues, when things are missing or overlooked, we present those out for present those to the creators so they can go back and fix them. So some tips for constructive comments. Number 1, indicate the most, least, and generally the extremes of the effective parts of the deliverable, of the assignment, and why. What is the thing that was done the best, that really met all of your expectations as a part of the user audience, and what was the thing that you really were challenged and struggled with as a reader to understand and to make sense of. That way, the designer, the creator sees, this is what I'm really doing well, and then not so much here. Number 2, offer suggestions that are supportive and encouraging. Say, hey, you did a really good job providing the definition and description of this complicated and confusing topic. But I think in this section where you go into detail about something you were interested in, I need a bit more. I want to be connected to it too. And encouraging them to develop in that space is important. And then number 3, be clear and specific by explaining what's unclear, if that makes sense, and or identifying exactly what confuses you. So if you have problems and challenges and obstacles, you want to make sure that you're not just saying, oh, I had an issue here, I didn't understand this. You're saying why you didn't understand it. You're saying what tripped you up, and then what you need as a user to make sense of that situation so you can move forward as a member of the audience. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this quick presentation on the power of peer review, how it can work for authors, designers, creators in different fields and areas, how it can work in the classroom, and how it can work in professional environments as well. If you liked this topic and you want more, you can always send me an email at Gallagher_PB@mercer.edu, or you can check out the Technical Communication Department at Mercer University. And hey, come join us, work with us, get into our classroom, learn about working on integrated teams for creating innovative designs, and much, much more. Thank you for joining me today.